the zone now. I'll try and hide the chat window so I can't see it. There we go. Hello there. I'm sure you've seen the CoH2 trailer video that's been uploaded today on the Relic YouTube page. It shows a developer diary, and it's got more gameplay footage than we've seen thus far. And I've noted a few things I've seen so far in it that I find interesting. I'm going to be doing this for my own purpose and just to show my friends. Let's have a look. I'm going to play it sound about halfway up, and I'm going to be stopping it at certain points so I can take note for you.
Company of Heroes 2 is the sequel to the highest rated RTS of all time. It takes place on the Eastern Front, which is one of the most vicious and epic battles that human history has ever been exposed to.
Nobody really knows about it. 13 of the 15 bloodiest battles of World War II were fought on the Eastern Front. The losses are in the millions. The scale of it is something that you haven't seen before. The story is something you haven't seen before. In Company Heroes 2, gamers can expect a lot of...
Alright, let's just stop the video there. Obviously what we saw there was a lot of stock footage from World War II, some very sexy Stalingrad footage there, wreckage, Nazi artillery, we've got bombings, interesting looking scout cars on skis. I mean, I've tried to Wikipedia that in my little bit of research I did before I started this. I can't find that to save my life. We've also got Katyusha rockets a little bit into it. Let's have a look. Yeah, there's a Panzer III, I believe. There's the Katyusha rockets. Some Russians walking past a dead comrade, or perhaps Nazi. Bombed out. I think this must be this must be Stalingrad we're looking at now. And here we go. This is the bit I wanted to point out to you.
In Company Heroes 2,
we've got stock footage fading beautifully into a gameplay animated world, or perhaps it's grayed out animated footage. Basically what it looks like they're going to do is blend stock footage into the game. I think it could end up being an incredibly immersive, although immersive isn't actually a word, but incredibly immersive kind of feeling. You're going to have the scenario set for you, and then you can have the gameplay and the context given. And here we go, here's the first bit of proper gameplay footage. We've got what looks like a flare and a strafing run. The guys are already suppressed. And we've got some beautiful looking environments in the background. You can see the squads further up the field to the top there. And let's keep playing this.
A lot of different things than they would have seen in the first version. The essence and...
What was that? We got a Shrek and perhaps either a Faust. Let's have a look. So there's the Panzer Shrek. That could be a warhead for the Shrek, or it could be a Faust. We don't know. Either way, these look like, Panzer Elite sort of tank buster squads that we're used to seeing.
The Essence engine
hitting a T-34 in the arse there.
One of the things that we wanted to up was the feeling of connecting you to the world.
Connecting you to the world. We've got a Tiger tank, Panzer IV tank, a T-34, what looks like 3 different squads of Russian troops, an M3 half-track, which is an American truck that the Germans used to get their units further up. Very beautiful scene here. Let's have a full screen view of that. In the background you can see some Germans, perhaps snipers, who knows. You can see what the different colours there they've got. We've got the Russians in more of a khaki uniform and the Nazis dark grey. But all the tanks seem to be quite... The Russians seem to have green skin, as we might start calling it, or camouflage as it used to be called. Tank traps set up here of the nature we've already seen in the previous game. Let's carry on.
The new line of sight system we're calling True Sight in Company of Heroes 2 introduces something that we don't think has ever been done quite this way before for RTS. True Sight basically takes into account things that would block your line of sight and represent...
Right, let's stop the video there. That's very interesting to all of us, I'm going to assume. We've got the UI. You've got the objective in the top left, capture the Citadel. We've got the tactical map here. Note that as we've already read, most of us, the strategic points aren't either munitions or fuels. They're absolutely neutral. It's up to you to change them into what you would like them to be, so you can utilise them for your own strategic purpose. And what we've got to the right, we've got in every single unit you select a portrait of the unit itself. Who knows? It could be like Doom. They could bleed from the nose when they're bloodied. Who knows? We've got 1, 2, 3 there, and 2, 2, 7 at the top. What I'm going to assume that is veterancy, so they're Vet 1, and they're on their way to Vet 3. They're 8th Guards Army Combat Engineers. I'll quickly read the sentence because it might not be in high enough quality for you. Combat engineers are basic combat troops whose primary is building structures, creating or clearing battlefield obstacles, or attacking enemy defensive positions. Builds headquarters and field structures, can assault enemy buildings. And of course they can assault enemy buildings via the flamethrower function, and you can see that nicely hotkeyed with T. So as soon as you update it in the common way we're all used to, it makes available the flamethrower instruction. Perhaps it's got a cooldown. That can't be confirmed, but it does have a separate box. That could just be to get people into using shortcuts more often, or it could be due to cooldown, who knows. We've got the UI for the resources. You've got manpower, munitions, fuel, population cap. Interestingly, we've got a lot more abilities to use for each unit. This is something like of a mod, like Blitzkrieg or something. For combat engineers alone, you've got what seems to be 7 different primary abilities. That seems to be a building option. Barbed wire has its own separate shortcut S. We've got repair, field medic kit, which isn't quite available. I think they must be, although they are greyed out, mines, different forms of mines. I have read somewhere that there will be more than one type of mine for this particular game. And obviously there you can demo a building. To the top here we've got the control groups, the individual groups for the entire game. We've got the vehicles at the bottom, the infantry groups at the top. Looks like a mortar. They look like to be guards. Guards were the elite troops of the Russian war. At the start, obviously after the Stalinist purges of the 1930s, there wasn't much designation for elite units. But as they got into the war, it became obviously abundantly necessary for military structure. So the guards were created based on the old imperial guards. I'm not making that up either, imperial guards from the Tsarist era. So yeah, guards, that's what they are. And they're going to be the grenadiers to the conscripts. The conscripts will be the Volt Grenadiers, the guards will be the grenadiers, to use an analogy from Company of Heroes. Below the control group selections, we've got the commander abilities, as I believe they'll be going to be called. We've got the individual ones here, and then the wheel that we're all used to, the XP wheel. The only things I can really make out is strafe and perhaps a bombing run, so this looks like an aerial setup. In this game, you're going to have setups for each commander. I think they're called archetypes, perhaps. Basically, you can set yourself up to be a commander who specialises in aerial attacks or passive abilities. It's not all been completely made clear to us yet, but basically that'll be the framework for it. And let's go onwards.
Count things that would block your line of sight and represents that in a dynamic line of sight war system. So as you come around the corner, if there's a wall that you wouldn't be able to see over, you don't get to see what's behind that, and that opens up a ton of tactical.
So yeah, this is very interesting. So yeah, what we've got here is the line of sight ability. It's called True Sight. Let's go back a little bit and see it in action.
Your line of sight and represents that in a dynamic. It
seems to creep gradually. What I can only assume is obviously the trailer will be based off early footage, is that it'll be a little bit more fluid in the final game. And I've played the alpha demo, a May build. I played it in October in London at the Expo, and I thought it was a lot more fluid than this footage seems to portray it as.
As you come around,
it seems a little bit more jerky in this particular trailer, but we are overanalyzing things. I mean, look, it just snapped, didn't it? And we saw the troops. But yeah, it seems to be, it's going to revolutionise the game in my mind. It's one of the things I'm most excited for, to be honest.
Be able to see over, you don't get to see what's behind that, and that opens up a ton of tactical and strategic options.
What did we have there? We had T-34s killing a tree, absolutely murdering it. Going onwards, we've now got Panzer IV tanks, 3 of them in unison, obviously targeting the same thing.
Flanking for sneak attacks, for ambushes.
So it really
There's a T-34 taking on a Tiger tank.
makes you think a whole lot differently about how you move about the world.
You talk about little things that make a big difference, and vaulting is one of those little things that makes a huge difference. In Company of Heroes 1, you had
Deep
no
snow.
opportunity to go around small obstacles, and this is something that I think that everyone would expect that an infantry soldier would be able to do, is jump over something.
And then there's vaulting. That's the first animation that they show us in this video. Let's go back and analyze it. The only thing I want to point out is
Soldier would be able to do is jump
there's one animation,
over something.
there's the second. Basically, they have different animations. An entire squad, each unit will jump in a different way to give it a much more natural
example
effect.
of how we use vaulting in Company Heroes 2 is that we wanted to get a visual language of any passable wall being something that you could climb over. If you pair that up with CoH2, there's a lot
There we go. There it is again.
with CoH2, there's a lot of situations in the game where the long way around, you're probably not going to make it. If you vault, now you can get to a location where you can
Look at that.
take cover.
3 different animations, 3 different soldiers.
Somewhere where you might be able to get
And then there's shivering to death. Here's obviously a
Weather was
campaign
incredible force to deal with
footage.
for both sides. It was something that would absolutely cripple an army
There's KV
if they were
tanks.
unprepared or if they got caught off guard. And it's something that we've really tried to capture in the gameplay experience of CoH2.
So CoH2
Right, but basically I am assuming they've already seen this trailer, by the way. That's why I am over-talking some of what they're saying. I'll link the full trailer in the description if you haven't already seen it. These are obviously going to be KV tanks, Clement Koroshilov tanks. They're basically the heavy tanks that served the Russians mostly through the war. If we do a quick search for flame, you can see that there was the KV-8 flamethrower tank, which was obviously what we're seeing. Experimental flame tank based on the KV-1 was mounted inside the hull to the right of the driver. Armoured box on the front of the chassis to the front of the driver. So yeah, there's all other variants that we could be seeing, but that's what we've got here. They're KV tanks.
Cripple an army if they were unprepared or if they got caught off guard. And it's something that we've really tried to capture in the gameplay experience of CoH2.
So CoH2 really delivers to players the choices that come about as a result of harsh winters. You've got
Yeah, thanks, sir. We've also got something very interesting. If you can remember,
CoH2 really
some mods
delivers-
allow this, but you can actually pop a commander out of your tank to increase its line of sight, because line of sight is an all-important component of this game, even more so than the previous game. You can actually pop the commander out the top, perhaps like the binocular function for Hetzers. And yeah, that seems very interesting. Perhaps he's a little bit more vulnerable to sniper fire. Who knows? Who knows?
As a result of harsh winters, you've got ice, you've got deep snow, and you've got vicious cold. And each of those bring a new tactical element for players.
If you bring your vehicles onto the ice, if somebody bombs the ice around your tank's going to sink. And it looks great. Like the ice cracks around it, you hear it crumble, the tank falls in. If there's any units that are standing nearby, they fall in the water and they try to swim for their lives, but they're doomed. It's too cold.
So I remember playing one of our multiplayer maps early in development, where I had originally played it in the spring. Now it's in the dead of winter. The rivers are now frozen over. My tanks and my troops can travel over them. The cover is all changed. It's a completely different experience.
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting parts of the entire thing. At the moment in the current game, you can choose, different forms of weather, twilight, dusk, what have you, different times of the day. In this game, it seems multiplayer maps will either have a spring or a winter mode. Spring being the beautiful, I think, even more impressively visualized mud maps, and then we've got the snow maps. So they each offer different things. Mainly, rivers frozen up. Look at the width of this river. If that's a multiplayer map and that river's frozen, imagine the amount of strategic abilities it opens up to you. And obviously we all know about one of the main things they tout about this game, the fact that you can bomb the rivers to kill the troops. This is an interesting still. We've got the Katyusha rockets all coming in to kill these units here. Armed with what seem to be, I don't know, G43 variants perhaps. They seem to be long-barreled rifles anyway, used for long-range firing. Perhaps that'll be one of the dynamics of the Germans over the Russians. Who knows?
Different experience, and that's what makes Company of Heroes so amazing.
Using
Panzer IV
line of
tanks.
sight, using smoke, using vaulting, using the true sight system, you're going to have more opportunities to ambush and surprise players.
Here we've got a machine gun team. Looks to be a German machine gun team. I know this because the Russian machine gun teams are 6 men. This seems to be a 3-man team with their, their assault infantry close by. There's a KV tank. or perhaps the the later tank, the Joseph Stalin tank, the IS series, Iosif Stalin rather. Let's get that up for you. These are the heaviest tanks that were produced. They've got a much higher profile hull, and they're the daddies basically, and they're a lot slower moving. They remind me in this footage perhaps from the Command and Conquer days of the 90s, the Mammoth tank. Look at that. It's uncanny, the resemblance to it. Yeah, these are absolute beasts. I'm not entirely sure if that's what we're seeing. It could be just a higher profile KV variant. But if I was Relic, I'd be wanting to include the most exotic and exciting tanks that they've got. So I think that's what we're seeing there.
Information warfare in a way that you've never seen in an RTS before.
I like that sentence. Use information warfare in a way that RTS hasn't seen before. And let's go back to this UI. Obviously, I've already done a breakdown, but what we're seeing here is snipers. So that's a little bit more interesting. You can immediately see that they're female in this situation anyway, at least. We've got, there they're located. We've got the Germans here. What else have we got? Have we got any abilities we're not used to? Seemingly not, just hold fire in a similar situation it used to be. This is funny for me and my friends. It says $, 7 digits, no key. That's an error you get in the current game when you fuck around with the font files. And it's an error I got when I tried to mod the game. Yeah. So it seems to be this. It's based off the same architecture they've already made, which is it's good for us because obviously it'll feel familiar, but it'll have enough added to it to make it a worthwhile game to play. And there's not much more to comment on, to be honest, on this particular UI compared to the earlier one.
Warfare in a way that you've never seen in an RTS before.
There is something actually. If we
battle
look,
tells a story, and 6 years later, after the
let's go back. Look, you can see that they've actually got a range. There's a range finder there. It doesn't seem to be very much for a two-person sniper team, but apparently the dynamics of it are you're meant to use people to spot for the snipers, and they do have a flare ability, I believe. Perhaps that's what's recharging there. I didn't note that at the time.
That you've
Let's
never
carry on.
seen in an RTS before.
We talk about every battle tells a story, and 6 years later, after the original Company of Heroes has been released, we still, as a team, when we play it, jump up out of our seats and run over to our opponents and talk about what just happened. It's never the same experience. Something always new and exciting.
Drowning.
And
Jesus
that really
Christ.
is what the Essence Engine brings to the table.
Right, there's plenty to talk about from what we just saw. Firstly, I may have missed it at first, but there's the heavier. I think it's a pack variant with a higher designation, so they're far better at taking out tanks. What else have we got? Troops drowning in the ice, falling through. There, look. Let's carry on. I did note something extremely important. Panzer IV tanks. Tommy guns by the looks of it. Yeah, it's definitely a Tommy gun variant with the... Or perhaps if they're German troops, it could be something else. Just wait for my dogs to finish barking. There we go, we've got Stuka dive bombers. One of the most terrifying things ever fielded in World War II. And this is it, this is very interesting. This is the Elephant tank. I'll get this up for you. The Elephant. I'll be including all these Wikipedia links in the description below. Only 91 were ever built. So this is a very exotic unit. I mean, in Company of Heroes, those are PSH submachines. Obviously, they were Germans, by the way, earlier when I said Tommy guns. Oh, they're Russians, so yeah, I was wrong. Doubly wrong. They are PSH 41 submachine guns, apparently. I'm not familiar with these too much myself. That's an awful picture. Look at that. Anyway, I digress. Back to Elephant tanks. Only 91 were ever built. They're massive, based off obviously the Tiger. We've got Panzerjäger, heavy tank destroyer. Very, very distinct track formation there with a U shape. You don't see that often. I will include this link. Reading about it's a lot better than I could ever describe it to you. Let's carry on. But yeah, the fact that there's only 91 built shows that they were fielded in the Kursk. In fact, they were entirely fielded in the Battle of the Kursk. This was a unit that only really saw heavy engagement in one particular battle. So yeah, that's the elephant
brings
tank.
to the table. It really allows us to provide that experience that you just never forget and always keep talking about.
And that's the trailer over. There's all the, obviously the pre-order nonsense. But basically, I'll contain all the links I've talked about in the description below, and include any comments, correct anything I've said. Basically, I'm just opening up discussion about it. I've probably been wrong about 5 or 6 times, but hopefully I've noticed a few things that you might not have seen otherwise. Thanks for watching.